Hello, I'm Steve Ryder and welcome to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. I'm joined by Sam Turner to look back at the action from Epsom on Friday and Saturday, and then we're joined later on the show by Rafe Beckett in order to look at how his runners performed at the meeting, have a look ahead to his Royal Ascot team, and also discuss the start of the dash. Sam first. How are you? Good couple of days?
Yeah, brilliant, Steve. Thank you. Yeah, really enjoyed Epsom. Thankfully, thanks to the incredible organisation and diligence of all the powers that be, it passed off without too many dramas, which was brilliant. We saw some explosive performances on the track. Obviously, the two fillies of John Gosden's on the Friday. It was a great aperitif to a terrific derby as well, which passed off largely without any concerns. I'm not going to lie, there was a good fear of, and trepidation going into the second day, into Derby Day, but thankfully, thanks to the efforts of the police and the jockey club and everybody involved, as I say, it passed off without any major issues, although we did get one or two interlopers that were dealt with rather swiftly. And I just thought it was a brilliant 2 days racing. On fast ground, I think Andrew Cooper did a pretty good job. The ground didn't suit every horse, but we're talking, we're almost the height of summer. It's one of our flat racing festivals. It should be run on fast ground and not soft ground. And if the weather decrees that's okay, then brilliant. And we were seeing horses really quicken and lengthen, and there's nothing like that, I don't think, when you're watching group races won by horses that really do change gear.
Yeah, I agree completely. It was safe ground, it was fast, safe ground, and that's exactly what you like. Exactly. Yeah. So perfect.
Andrew's excellent at his job, so we were blessed to see some brilliant equine performances. Thought we saw a brilliant Derby winner. I think the data sort of backs that up as well. And it's just fascinating to see how that weekend sets the rest of the narrative for the flat season.
And that leads us nicely into our first section, which is Racing Recap. Right, Sam, so there's only one place to really start then. The Derby, fantastic winner, Auguste Rodin, bounced back to form to give Aidan O'Brien a record-extending 9th Derby win. What do you think of the performance?
Silenced the doubters, didn't he?
Definitely.
Auguste Rodin. And to be honest, he was a difficult horse to tip, really, wasn't he? From a personal perspective and perhaps your own, unless you had, unqualified faith in Ballydor. Most of us do have, but unfortunately, we've heard things through the years that this is the greatest horse we've ever seen. This is the most important horse we've ever seen. He travels beautifully. He quickens well. She's got everything. So you hear the superlatives emerge from Ballydor, and you start to take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But in this case, it was all most definitely vindicated that faith that they had from this horse at an early age. He's a very, very important horse now, isn't he, to Ballydor with Galileo passing. He's by Deep Impact out of rhododendron, impeccably bred, and his data on Saturday shows that he's got an electric turn of foot. He stays very well. He's a hardy horse. He travels well. He copes with all the rigours of a derby. He'd win over a mile and a quarter. He'd win over a mile and a half.
Yeah, you say about having faith, obviously, in Ballydor and Aidan O'Brien getting horses back. Obviously, Little Big Bear had a similar sort of prep from that 2,000 guineas, a below par run. Came back to win the Sandy Lane Stakes in fantastic fashion. So you could obviously at that point tip or select obviously Auguste Rodin with a bit more confidence, having seen Little Big Bear obviously perform like that.
Yeah, Meditate as well. Another horse that bounced back from a sort of a below par reappearance. I think that's a perfectly valid comment really, and also I think with horse race tipsters or analysts or punters and whatever, we're very loath to forgive, aren't we? I mean, obviously the market suggested that we should forgive because he was a 4-1 9-2 chance when he went off. So plenty of people were forgiving Auguste Rodin for that below par effort in the Guineas when there was travel problems and all sorts of issues through the race. So there were things that you could exonerate him for from that weekend. But I think it just does bear in mind that these top class trainers really are unbelievable, aren't they? The John Gosden's of this world. Charlie Appleby, I know he didn't have a great weekend. Aidan O'Brien, Rafe Beckett, we were going to have on the show later. But they're just superb at identifying what a horse needs after a run. So very well, working away with the horse and getting plenty of prep and etc. into the horse before the race. But after the race, when they get them home, they work out a way of then getting a passage back to the track, what we're going to do with it in that interim period. I think that's where these top class trainers really do excel, very rare that you see them bounce too badly, their horses, and they usually bounce back. The Gosden team were a little bit quiet through the spring, but look how they've come right now. And I just think that experience and that quality and the way that they deal with these horses individually on a daily basis is the way that they shape them and make them into champions. And that's certainly what Aidan O'Brien has managed to do. I thought he spoke very lucidly after the race. Some really good quotes about how important this horse is to Ballydor going forward, and also what the victory meant to them. He was almost quite emotional. I thought that was brilliant to hear.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a blessing, I suppose, for the ongoing season that he was beaten in the 2,000 Guineas. Obviously, if he'd have won that, they'd have obviously had to run in the St Ledger, go for the Triple Crown. So preparation-wise, I think it actually was a bit of a blessing that they could just kind of reset. Yeah. The 2,000 Guineas was always going to be the hardest task, wasn't it? He always looked like a stayer, obviously winning the what used to be the Race Post Trophy, obviously Doncaster. He was always going to be the stayer. The 2,000 Guineas was always going to be that question mark. I don't think we'll see him in the Ledger now. No. You'd imagine he'll either go King George over a mile and a half, Arc later on in the year after the Irish Derby. I think the Irish Derby is a logical next step. Or give him a break. Irish Champion Stakes, Arc possibly. Yeah. I know he's kind of quite likes running his good horses in the Irish Champion Stakes. But
yeah, and obviously I think there's races over 10 furlongs on the agenda, as you say, that the Champion Stakes maybe even eclipse and then go into the back end of the year. They've got loads of options. I mean, he did sort of around 33 seconds for the last 3 furlongs at the end of. Okay, it was a modestly run early tempo, the Derby, but it certainly picked up pace from the home turn. And I thought there were 1 or 2 really good performances from those that were not marooned as such, but weren't in a great position compared to the winner and the second, who we should give plenty of plaudits to. That was an incredible run from him.
Yeah, that's where the injection of pace came from, wasn't it? King of Steel was an incredible training performance. Everyone kind of concentrates on Aidan O'Brien's training performance with the winner, but wow, Roger Varian obviously received the horse from David Loughnane, but yeah, coming into there, I know they obviously were aiming to run in the Dante, but that didn't obviously then happen. No. Straight into the Derby, looked like he was going to win a couple of furlongs outruns his odds, and yeah, he's only beaten half a length at the finish. He's an exciting, a horse who I didn't think would handle Epsom. I was a big fan of the horse last year, but for a horse that size to handle the undulations of Epsom and go down Tattenham Corner was some performance.
And show the pace that he had, like you say, on a track which really wouldn't play to his strengths. Nice. The size of him, as you say, the scope. He got stuck in the mud a little bit at Doncaster, didn't he? But he's made up 9 lengths effectively on Auguste Rodin from that futurity performance. And I just thought it was a brilliant riding performance, really. I know there was a fair bit of recrimination from Kevin Stott, and he looked quite emotional in the interview afterwards. But when you look at the data, he rode a perfectly judged race. Maybe he could have waited 1/10 of a second longer. Yeah. He clocked the fastest furlong time during the race as well. So he's got that injection of speed. And maybe just on that little climb to the line, the last 50 yards, it found him out a little bit, and he was decelerating a little bit more than the winner. But they finished 4 or 5 lengths clear of a good horse in white birch that ran particularly well in a Dante, a strongly run Dante. So that backed up that form. They're 5 lengths clear of that. So I don't think Kevin can have too many quibbles about what he did on the horse. And you're on a horse that essentially it's Kevin's first ride on in a race. He doesn't really know, other than riding in work, what he's capable of doing in a race, when the juices are flowing and the adrenaline's pumping. So I thought he rode a pretty exceptional race, to be honest.
Yeah, it's always one of those things. Straight after the event, you've got to be disappointed finishing second, being that close to winning. But yeah, like you, no one can have an issue with that ride, other than him being slightly disappointed. The fact that
they are, aren't they? And when they finish second, they always think, "Oh, what could I have done and what could I have won?" But Ryan's body language was he went for Auguste Rodin, then almost put his hands down because he thought he was going to get there too soon, and then the horse was picked up again for him. So I think wherever King of Steel had been, I think he might have just got mowed down later on anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. You touched on White Birch, ran well from being last round in the turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looks a proper St Ledger candidate, doesn't he, going forward, really?
He does. He stays very well for Ulysses, doesn't he?
Yeah.
he was slowly away from his box again, but that looked more designed than by accident. As he has got that propensity to be a bit slowly away. But he's a terrific horse. I mean, he rattled home. His closing sectional was exceptional. It had to be for him to get placed from where he was in the position he was. That's the one thing, is that he always tends to handicap himself a little bit, doesn't he, during his races? And unless there is a pace collapse, and you're unlikely to get that in Group 1 because you've got horses they're that good, they just keep lengthening and quickening. But he's run brilliantly again. And I must admit, after Leopardstown, I thought, he's the type of horse you really see on a long straight like Doncaster, just winding up. And, he's proved that he gets a strong, or a stiff mile and a half at Epsom. So a mile 6 at Doncaster should be within his remit.
Definitely. Touching on a few of the beaten horses, Passenger was just too keen early, really.
Yeah.
Military Order, I don't think handled the track.
No, that was a pretty abysmal run.
Yeah.
Really. He's better than that, isn't he?
Arrest, you saw lose a shoe. I watched the replay of it. You actually see it come off.
Yeah. He looked pottery on the ground on the track, didn't he?
Yeah.
I thought Spreewell didn't handle the downhill either.
No. He was slightly
really
unlucky. He was slightly unlucky in the straight. Got blocked a couple of times, kind of when he was just trying to find a gap. The Foxes stumbled leaving the stalls, got a bit further back than I imagine.
He's run a sound race though,
yeah.
For a horse that there was one or two sort of stamina doubts about.
They'd still be there as well for me, the stamina doubts. I wouldn't be sure around that. I think 10 furlongs will end up being his trip.
Yeah, I mean, if you were campaigning him, you'd stick to 10, and races like the Eclipse would be on the agenda.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think he's a Group 1 standard.
Yes,
definitely.
Yeah, he travels so well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's got that strong cruising speed. Very taken with, I thought, Artistic Star and Vipero. I know your eyes are always drawn to the closers, but especially Artistic Star, it looked like he was going to be dropping out the back of the telly at one point. Has really finished strongly. We'll touch on him a little bit more with Rafe Beckett shortly, but I was taken with that performance for an inexperienced horse, and I thought Vipero ran perfectly adequately as well to be beaten 10 lengths. I thought it was a nice effort from him.
Yeah. Anything else from the Derby? I think we've done that.
No, not really. Yeah, as I say, we've sort of covered it pretty strongly. But I thought the one horse that could run a massive race in the Irish Derby was the 4th, Spreewell, who back on a more orthodox track.
Yeah,
I think he'll be a big player again.
Yeah, one to look forward to then. We'll then move on to the Oaks. Soul Sister provided Frankie Dettori with his second Group 1 of the day after Emily Upjohn, that we'll obviously speak around later. He's 7th overall in the Oaks. Obviously
Incredible.
Burst past odds-on favourite Save the Last Dance, won by nearly 2 lengths at the finish. That again, we spoke around an injection of pace. She's got a proper turn of foot, hasn't she?
She has. It didn't quite match up with Emily Upjohn earlier on. A lot of people were trying to draw comparisons between the two, and Frankie quite rightly said, "Well, yeah, wait till she's managed to achieve what Emily Upjohn's achieved, but at least she did win at Oaks, whereas Emily Upjohn was unlucky not to." But I just thought she enjoyed the ground a lot more than Save the Last Dance. She was always just a little bit on the pump when she always in 3rd, 4th gear. Ryan never looked totally happy on her all the way round, and it was to her credit that she was beaten less than 2 lengths really at the line. I think if there had been any dig in the ground, I think it would have been a much more even battle. But Soul Sister's just got that lateral speed that we saw. I mean, she did 33 and bits at York, didn't she, from the 3 furlong pole, and that was quicker than the 6 furlong sprinters that day. So she has got that change of gear. She's still a very, very, perhaps not a young horse, but very youthful in her education. It's still very early on, very formative stages of her career. She didn't really have a run at Newbury. She just had a piece of work there. She stepped on that markedly to win the Musidora in real good style. And then that was another very authoritative performance. I did think it was a masterclass in the saddle, if I'm honest. I thought that was one of the rides of the weekend. That could have gone horribly wrong at one point, but Frankie's managed to take back, get some cover, get her settled, get her into a rhythm, and then let her fill her lungs a little bit, let everything play out in front of it, and then just come with that wide sweeping run. I thought, perhaps a more inexperienced rider might have flapped a little bit, but instead of being posted 3 or 4 wide, he had quite a long way back, and I did think at one point, you're going to have to be a good filly to give Save the Last Dance half a dozen lengths after being keen early, but she managed it and won in style.
Yeah, both performances, that and the Musidora, Frankie has taken a wide right down the inside, so it will be interesting in kind of the coming next starts whether she will go through fillies and kind of get a bit more cover, because she is one that is keen. So getting cover on her is going to be crucial. So there is going to be that time where Frankie's going to be waiting for a gap, and whether she's brave enough to go through it.
True, she might be that good. She can always come round them.
True.
The way she travels through a race is very high cruising speed, stays well, handles fast ground well. There's plenty to like about her.
Yeah. Race lost a main contender in Running Lion. Bit of a shame, obviously withdrawn at the start. She bids to go back to the French Oaks, get redemption there.
But she just got a little scrape on her backside, didn't she? Yeah. But no great issue. I wonder whether that might be a blessing. Certainly for the Gosden team, they'll be delighted. They've won the race. Yeah. They haven't used a bullet with Running Lion. They've still got that to fire in France. It's probably happy days for them.
Yeah, and 10 furlongs will arguably suit her possibly better than what a mile and a half actually would have done at Epsom itself.
It would be hard to see her having that capacity to lengthen at the end of 12 furlongs the way that Soul Sister did. I'm not saying Running Lion is any slower over 10. It'd be a good race between them over 10, but I think over 12, I know who I'd favour.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll then have a look at the rest of the racing from Epsom, avoiding Coronation Cup and Princess Elizabeth Stakes that we'll touch on with Rafe Beckett later.
Yeah.
Bobsleigh won the Woodcote Stakes. Connections have got some good horses, haven't they? Obviously, Chipotle was fantastic from a couple of seasons ago. Likely to drop in trip, apparently. Windsor Castle over 5 is the target.
Yeah, as one wag said to me, handled the downhill well. It was a good performance. There's plenty of money for him as well. He'd done a good figure at Brighton. He did plenty wrong at Brighton. Watching the VT back, he was keen early. And yet the way that he's flown up the hill at Brighton, that suggests that there's a lot of lateral ability there. Eve Johnson-Hutton's done brilliantly with her 2-year-olds this year, having a really good season. And as you say, they had a great weekend. So I thought he was a good winner. I thought Hatton was unlucky, obviously, missed 6 or 7 lengths out the boxes. Yeah. I thought Pat Dobbs looked after him, had to go the inside route because that was the only option he had, got stopped a couple of times. Yeah, he looks tailor-made to be a Coventry contender, whether he's got the class or not. But I liked him go to post. He's quite a big bull of a horse. You know, I didn't quite realise sort of what a compact and chunky colt that he is. I think he's still a very nice 2-year-old with a big upside at the moment.
Yeah, it's like you said, Pat Dobbs appeared to kind of go, okay, that's race over. Yeah. We'll look after him. And then suddenly started making headway. And the Nick Bradley horse kind of just leaned in on him as he was making his effort down the inside. But I thought that was a fantastic performance from Hartem in defeat. And Coventry Stakes all set to go there with a good chance, I would say.
Ideal, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, definitely. Olivia Meralda was one of my highlights of the meeting, really. I quite fancied her at a massive price in the 1,000 guineas. Just didn't quite get the trip on that ground. But, she won the Surrey Stakes in fantastic style.
Yeah, clocked some unbelievable furlong times as well. She's dipped under 10 seconds, the only horse to do that, other than perhaps the sprints, which I didn't, the 2 5-furlong sprints. But, those races around the bend, around Tattenham Corner, under 10. No, you've got to feel sorry for Holgan, who got mugged on the line at Haydock by Anglo Bleu and then has been beaten by Olivia Meralda. She bounced off the fast ground. Thought it was a really good day for Kevin Stott. We touched on his ride on Saturday, but he obviously rode the big price horse in the Oaks at Mamajune that finished 4th, ran really well. Cadillac was another horse that he bought off the pace to win good sectionals as well, as you would imagine, seeing the way that the race transpired. And Olivia Meralda, they've really got a talented filly to sort of go to war with now. 7 furlongs, fast ground. She's got plenty of pace. She could probably drop back if she wanted to. Yeah,
Jersey Stakes would be the logical step for her.
That looks the move, doesn't
Ascot. It? Yeah, you touched on Cadillac. Really impressive first-time cheap pieces. Worked the treat, didn't they?
Yeah.
Kevin Stott gave him a great ride. Apparently steps up to listed level. Wolferton Stakes at Royal Ascot. Next for him, and you can completely understand why.
Yeah, first win outside of Ireland. I think he won 3 at Leopardstown, 1 at the Curragh. Got sold at that big sale on the Monday night of Royal Ascot. I think got placed the year that he was sold. And then it's obviously, George Bowie had a really good weekend because obviously Novello winning as well. So that was a terrific couple of days for the stable. I was just really taken with Cadillac. I mean, you look at his data. He reeled off 3 sort of sub 10.5 furlongs, and you can understand then why he came from so far back and showed that exhilarating turn of foot to go and win. You know, the overall time was pretty solid as well. I think he's definitely a horse in really good heart at the moment, and if he can reproduce that, he's going to be a live contender, whichever Ascot race he goes for.
Yeah, no, definitely. Last one for me to mention is Regal Reality. Nice to see him back in the winners' enclosure. You never really know what you're going to get with him.
No.
Can put in those performances, but Highland Avenue is a proper solid horse. Obviously, placed behind Adayar on his reappearance, he set the standard. But yeah, Regal Reality won the Diamond Stakes in good style.
Yeah, in the colours of Peter Doan, obviously brother of Fred, who they sponsored the Derby and the Oaks, and indeed the St. Leger. So that was great for their family. I think Peter was present at watching the Cup final, watching
at Wembley,
beloved Manchester United against Manchester City, but at least Regal Reality put up a bit more of a solid performance. And it carried on an incredible sort of stat with 8-year-olds in that race. And I begin to think that, you know, Group 3 should be won by a progressive, up-and-coming type horse, but I think that's either the 6th or the 7th 8-year-old to win that since the turn of the century. So it is a race that really suits those longer in the tooth. Regal Reality stepped forward quite markedly from that run back at Newmarket, where he wasn't really ever at the races, but he has got an abysmal first-time out record, and he's not a horse that you'd trust specifically, but he's very, very capable on his day when he gets a bit of fast ground. I think the race just set up really well for him, didn't it? Marie's Diamond went off at a good gallop, and you know, he started to pick up his stride sort of between the 3 and the 2, and really finished off well. It was another defeat for Appleby short price, and it just wasn't a great weekend, was it, for the Godolphin team?
No, not at all. I want to touch on Ace Impact in the French Derby, but before we do that, anything else from Epsom across the remainder of the racing?
Well, not that well, Torito I was really taken with on Saturday. We'll perhaps get a line from Rafe shortly about his horse Battles Play that ran in the same race, but the way that he's gone through that race, I think he's tailor-made for a Royal Ascot race now, whether that's the handicap or whether they go into group company with him. But I mean, he just sauntered through. You know, you put him anywhere you like. He was second to Artistic Star at Sandown. I was very, very taken with him, just the way that he moved through the race. He looks a class performer to me, Torito, and you know, he travelled very well at Sandown. He just couldn't cope with Artistic Star, but he wasn't knocked about by Rab Havlin, and I thought Benoit de la Salle enjoyed an armchair ride on Saturday. Yeah,
interesting that they got Benoit to obviously then ride. It's going to be interesting jockey situation obviously going forward at Gosden after this year, but the fact that he's got the confidence to give him that big ride when others would obviously be available and everything from there.
He's a class rider, no doubt about it. I mean, this year I've just been bowled over with how good he is, really. I know he has that, he's shown that sort of ability in the saddle, and obviously he's had his problems as well, like one or two riders have in their time, but he's come back the right way, and he looks a class act for me, just, you know, beautifully poised. He looks like a mini Frankie. Now, whether the Gosden job comes a year or two too early for him, we don't know. But there'll be a succession plan in place, I would imagine, from John and his team for when Frankie calls it a day. But he's a hard man to replace, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, look at those rides on Friday, just brilliant. Just seems to be whatever, you know, retirement has given him some freedom, and he's just going out and enjoying every minute of it. But he's riding as well as ever.
Yeah, definitely. Ace Impact. Won the French Derby. An incredible performance, really. Jean-Claude Rouget, Colt remains unbeaten. If you watch the race up until a couple of furlongs out, you think Big Rock has gone clear, is going to win comfortably. But in the end, it's not really even him tying up towards the finish. So Ace Impact just takes off, wins by 3.5 lengths, and could be heading to the Arc, and it looks a good race this far out.
Yeah, I've seen one or two people say, oh, there must have been a big pace collapse and he's come flying up, but I don't think there was. Big Rock was probably coming to the end of his tether, having been pretty aggressively ridden, but I don't think they were particularly closing that quickly in behind. I just think it was an exceptional performance from the winner. He's posted some really good sectionals, and he just looks a class act. I think that's the 5th win in 8 years for Jean-Claude Rouget. I think he's 6th overall. I think he's joined quite a lofty list there, the likes of Pascal Barry, etc. Epictetus for John and Thady Gosden and Frankie ran a perfectly satisfactory race in 5th. Thought that was a pretty good effort from him. Really wasn't beaten too far, and that sort of represents the Dante form again, doesn't it? So we're getting these races are starting to line up, and we're getting to find out who the preeminent colts are in, the 3-year-old colts are in Europe now. But I think Ace Impact, he'd have to be right up there, the way that he's destroyed that field on Sunday.
Yeah, Bet365 agree with you, Sam, because
Right.
yeah, he is currently 8-1 second favourite for the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. Later in the season, Auguste Rodin currently favourite at 5-1, and then you've got the couple of mares in there. So Emily Upjohn 8-1, Soul Sister 14-1, Save the Last Dance at 14-1. I know it's a long far out, and I know I'm throwing this to you with no prep, but who would be your long-term?
Well, Save the Last Dance is interesting for me if she got a genuine soft ground. We've seen fillies have got a great record in that race, bizarrely. So I think at double-figure prices, she'd make some interest at 14s.
Yeah, definitely. And you'd imagine she'd get her softer ground at that time of the year as well in October.
What about yourself?
It's going to be interesting. I'm really interested in what they're going to do with Desert Crown. For the remainder of the season, but that would be a logical way round. I loved his reappearance. I know a few people gave Kingscote some pelters for that ride, but
I don't really understand why he just got.
Not at all.
The winner was brilliant.
Exactly. So yeah, I think he looks quite big at 16-1 if that's the chosen route that they decide to go down for later in the season.
And if say you were Frankie, what would you do? Would you there's a lot of conjecture about whether he's actually going to retire at the end of the year, or he's saying that sort of August 21st or something is going to be his last ride in Britain, etc. Would you try and encourage him to ride for another year, or would you say?
No, I think after all the fanfare and no, this is my last ride at Epsom and all this sort of stuff, no, I think that would be it. It'd be a shame to see him go out kind of at the end of the season, but I'd like to see him go over to France for the Arc and Breeders' Cup, and then that's it. Frankie's then done.
Yeah.
I don't think he will change his mind and go on for another season. I think some people will think slightly lesser of him for that, albeit that he is obviously riding at the top of his game.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the argument that people say, well, you want to squeeze the lemon as much as it'll go, but how do you sort of replicate or improve on what he's managing to achieve at the moment? It's just ridiculous. He's won numerous Group 1s already this year. He's at the top of his game. Surely, when you're a top-class sportsman, you want to go out when people are saying, why on earth are you retiring? Not when are you retiring?
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way that he sort of protects his legacy, which has been brilliant.
Yeah.
God, we'll miss him though.
Oh yeah, definitely. On the racetrack and after in interviews, definitely.
Indeed, because he's box office, isn't he? As you say, on and off the track.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else to add around the weekend just gone?
That's done us.
Lovely. Perfect. That brings to an end Racing Recap. So we are delighted to welcome Rafe Beckett onto the show. We are going to have a look back at a couple of the races and also touch on Royal Ascot and a few of the entries in. So thanks, Rafe. Thanks for joining us. Obviously, Coronation Cup, Westover finished second to Emily Upjohn. What were your thoughts on his performance?
I thought it was a good effort. There was a couple of things that I was really pleased about. First of all, that he settled so well. We thought that would happen, the uphill nature of the first couple of furlongs, or nearly the first half mile of the 12 furlong course there. That was obviously going to play to us, play in our favour. He'd been off for nearly 3 months, so that was the first part of, and the fact that he relaxed so well, I was really pleased about. The top of her game. Looked like she was at the top of her game in the preliminaries as well. I think the other point I'd make is that it was a very fast time. Was it nearly 2 3/4 seconds? So that's a factor in itself. He's been unlucky to run into her in a way, and the horse in Dubai too. But it'll happen for him this year.
Yeah, he's bumped into 2 absolute superstars, really, hasn't he, Rafe? You've been very fortunate. Do you find that he's now sort of maturing a little bit mentally? Are you finding him a little bit easier to train that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is a more mature horse all round. I think physically and mentally. I mean, he looks like the finished article now, certainly, Sam. So, I'd be pretty hopeful that we can dance a few dances this year get him into a place where, you know, we can win. The races like the Grand Prix de Saint-Cloud are obvious for him coming up, and there's a few other ideas in the melting pot as well for his next start or two. So see how we go.
Would you possibly go for the rematch against Emily Upjohn in the Hardwick, or would that kind of come a bit too soon?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realise she was going to go there, but I would say, you know, we've also got other irons in the fire for those races too. For example, Ascot could go to the Hardwick. You know, she's in the Gold Cup as well. So I would say it's probable that he'll miss Royal Ascot in one way or another at this stage.
You must have been delighted how, I mean, he travelled very well through the race. He didn't quite match the winner's sort of scintillating turn of foot, but he was closing down all the way to the line. You must have been quite pleased with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Frankie wasn't hard on the winner in the last half a furlong, but to pull 7 lengths clear of the third and the fourth, that's pretty good effort, whatever way you look at it, you know.
Very much so.
So, it's frustrating, but it is what it is, and we'll find, you know, he'll have his day again, I'm sure of that.
And would the Arc be the ultimate again, Rafe?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is that the soft ground there is probably not, it was quite an effort for him to get through the soft ground there last year. Who's to know what the ground will be in October? But if it came up soft again, I think I'd probably want to duck that. But you know, I think he enjoyed Longchamp. He showed a liking for the place. So we'll see how it develops.
Yeah, and Sam, just touching on the winner, obviously 2 from 2 in a hood now. Emily Upjohn obviously relaxed so well in the race. The connections have kind of said Eclipse or Hardwick next. 7-2 favourite for the Eclipse with Bet365, 5-1 for both the Hardwick and the Prince of Wales going forward. Like, what are your thoughts on her going forward?
Yeah, I was very impressed. I mean, the vibes beforehand, and Rafe probably saw her up close and personal. I didn't get to see her, unfortunately, but the vibes were that she would probably progress for the run, and I think Frankie afterwards suggested that, you know, she wasn't fully tuned up, so to go and produce that scintillating turn of foot when she's not necessarily 100% cherry ripe was astonishing, really. She doesn't lack pace. The data suggests that. The sectionals that she posted were exemplary, really. A number of sub 11-second furlongs just shows you where she won the race as well. You could see that visually from the way that she just took off when the camera angle shifted, and you really got the full majesty of her stride, really. And to be fair, I thought Westover did really well to try and keep tabs on her, because I think she's pretty special. Yeah,
she is. Proper Group 1 filly. Rafe, we then move on to the Princess Elizabeth Stakes. Obviously, Prosperous Voyage, winning what's likely to be Frankie Dettori's final ride at Epsom. So it worked out well. What were your thoughts on her performance? Obviously, didn't go completely to plan from the start.
No, missing the break wasn't ideal. But, you know, to get to and to Ryder from off the pace, I don't think we've done that for some time. I can't remember the last time we rode it that way, to be honest. So to do it that way and get involved as she did was really, you know, and to win cosily, I felt. I mean, I don't know what, I'd be interested to hear what you thought, but, you know, he wasn't hard on her to get there. And then, you know, she won with a bit in hand, I felt. Now, obviously, she's meeting lesser fillies on paper than she'd met in the past, or in the past 6 runs. But I was really pleased that, you know, to get a win next to her name is, you know, I have to confess, it wasn't a race it was a race that we discussed earlier in the spring with our owners and Jamie McCalmont, who helps manage their affairs. But it wasn't a race that I was that high. Rather felt it was a sort of waste of, in many ways it would be a waste of a run, but for her to go and in the sense that, you know, the race that used to be called the Windsor Forest, it comes up relatively quickly, and you've then got the Falmouth, where I think everybody would be keen to go back to, and so on. The rest of the year sort of pans out from there. My view would be that my view at the time was that I wasn't. Princess Elizabeth is a lovely race to win, but do we really need to be going there? In retrospect, obviously, this was a really good decision, and sets her up nicely for Royal Ascot. So it was a good effort. She, having sort of hit the gate, she sort of anticipated it and missed it as a result. So that's the way it goes. Frankie showed all his skill in riding her patiently and getting her head in front.
Yeah, he really did excel on the fillies, didn't he, over the weekend? And you look at a couple of her furlong splits as well. That sharp turn of foot is still very much present, and she loves that fast ground to bounce off as well. So, all systems going forward with her. She looks as though she just really enjoyed that slightly different test that she encountered at the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I've always had an itch to go further with her because of her pedigree. Her pedigree would suggest that she will. She's got a full brother who gets a mile and a half well. It might be that we end up in the Breeders' Cup Fillies and Mares Turf at the end of the year. That might be an option, stepping up in trip. There's lots of things we can proven to be better than any of us envisaged her being at 2. After she was third in the Prestige, we never really, the Mayhill was a roll of the dice, and we kept on rolling the dice, and it paid off on the July course last year. It could be that I'm interested to hear that the sectionals indicated that, because I felt that she was going to tighten up a bit more for Sam. Middle nowadays, and she's a bit more as she's got older, rather. So listen, she's a joy to have around, and the ranks that she has it's been great fun.
Yeah, she was only a touch slower for a couple of furlongs than the 6 furlong sprinters, so that shows that change of gear is certainly there anyway.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and for viewers out there, Prosperous Voyage 6-1 with Bet365 for the Duke of Cambridge Stakes next at Royal Ascot. So yeah, she's well fancied for that race. Rafe, how was Artistic Star come out of the Derby?
Yeah, for a horse who's as inexperienced as he is, I think it was a really. It was unfortunate. What was unfortunate was that he got a good position early from his good draw, and then he got slightly squeezed out at the top of the hill there when they crossed over to the inside rail. And as soon as he got squeezed out, he sort of dropped the bridle because he was trying to organise himself. I thought at one point it was going to be sort of. He was going to be, and he was still last with 2 to run, and even a furlong and a half to run, he was still last. So to finish off as he did, really encouraging. As immature as he is, he's 27th of May foal, and. For us, as for us to have got him there, given how immature he is, was brilliant, really. And we didn't went there with no real expectation. The great, he likes his trainers to be on the front foot. We've seen it many times over the years with horses trained by David Ellsworth and Ian and Andrew Balding. You're not to hide anybody's light under a bushel if you train for Jeff. And so he was really really pleased that with the result on Saturday, because the horse finished off as well as he did, as I was. I'd be really interested to know what the sectionals were for the that will give us a bit of a steer as to where he goes next as well. But he's come out of it well, and he's a tough, like a lot of his side, or most of his side stock. He's a tough beggar who's going to keep taking his racing well, I think.
Well, he certainly came home quicker than Spreewell, the Foxes, Waipiro. And, just the first 2 or 3 are obviously a lot quicker. Well, no, I say a lot quicker, probably 4 to 5 lengths quicker from the three pole. But other than that, he's left everybody else for dead, hasn't he?
Look that way. So it's great. And and the form obviously was Frank from Sandown with Torito winning the mile as well. So it's great.
And moving forward, Rafe, I mean, is he a fairly uncomplicated horse? I mean, obviously he's got a good mind because he coped with everything that went on Saturday.
Yeah, he's a very good mind. He's a sort of free sweater. That doesn't mean anything really. He's but we were the and he moves like a fast ground horse. So it wasn't a surprise that he handled the fast ground as well as he did, and I can see him going to, I can see him recovering quickly enough for the King Edward VII.
And then possibly onto the Ledger, perhaps.
Yeah, he looks that's likely, I would think, at this stage. But no, I think it's an even year. Very immature still. He's still quite unfurnished. So I hope that he's come a long way pretty quickly. Great. The morning when he had to be supplemented in April, and we had long discussions. We had to make a decision because it's 9,000 to supplement at that stage, and we had to make a decision what to do. But I'm glad we did, and he'll have learned a ton on Saturday, and we should have plenty of fun with him in the coming months and next year. I think he's a horse who'll progress from 3 to 4, certainly.
Definitely. We've touched on a few little kind of Royal Ascot pointers from there. Obviously, it looks as if you've got a good team going there, the likes of Angel Blur possibly in the Queen Anne, and a few in the Royal Hunt Cup.
Yeah, Angel Blur would need rain to go anywhere, really. And his best form is round a bend. So the Queen Anne is, improbable at this stage, I would say. But we'll see how that develops. For the Hunt Cup, yes, Jimi Hendrix obviously didn't run well in the Suffolk handicap, but the straight mile at Ascot, he was third in the Britannia last year, and it's a place that clearly suits him. So he'll almost certainly go there, as well as own as Sonny Liston. He'll probably go there as well, though I feel that he's more of a he will end up at 1.25 miles with him in all likelihood. But the Hunt Cup will be a stepping stone towards that.
And what would you do with Biggles, Rafe? Would he go for the 7 furlong handicap?
7 furlong handicap, I think we've got Star of Orion and Biggles. Biggles has always been a soft ground horse, ran very well in the Victoria Cup. Yeah. But as he's got older, I think he's become a bit hardier. He was always how would I describe him? A little bit effeminate, would be fair to say. But he's growing up now at the age of 5, finally, and I think we can be a little bit more aggressive with his campaigning now. And Star of Orion suits the 7 furlong track there, so he's likely to go for that race too.
Will Lazoo drop in trip for the Commonwealth Cup?
Yeah, I was very glad that she ran so well in the Guineas. Really, she's training well, and I'm looking forward to that. She worked well on Saturday. She worked well the previous week, and we're in a good place with her.
And then Kinross as well, are aiming for what they now call the Queeners with the second Jubilee Stakes.
What legend?
Yeah, he'll definitely. The plan is to run there, whatever the ground is. He actually ran very well in it last when it was quick, but he's got to go. He's got to run somewhere, and I think we didn't run him in the July Cup last year, but he'll definitely run in that this year, all being well. And I think that's a race that will suit him very well.
Brilliant. And what are you thinking for the Ribblesdale, Rafe?
Ribblesdale, possibility. I would have loved to have run her in the Oaks, but she just wasn't ready.
Sorry, was that Luck in Brew? We just lost you for a second there.
Sorry, yeah, Blue Stocking, I would have loved to have run her in the Oaks, but she just wasn't ready. So it's likely that she'll show up in the Ribblesdale. I think in time we'll be glad that we missed the Oaks. I think it'll certainly count for her down the line. But it was a shame we couldn't get there. But that's life, and she'll wherever she goes next. I think she appears to be improving since Newbury. I think she's in better shape now than she was going into the race. So we'll see how that develops. Luck in Brew, she's had a tough spring, but her form's worked out very well from Pontefract. Carnarvon running so well in the Oaks. So I think she's like, she's just like her full sister. Antonia de Vega, you'll remember, needs soft ground, and this filly does too. So, or certainly give juice in the ground. So her campaign will be framed around that. And then Understated, who was second in the height of fashion. I was really pleased with that effort. She shapes like a filly who's going to get further. So I think she's likely to go to a mile and a half. Whether that's the Ribblesdale or not, we'll see. But that's the way we're headed anyway. Yeah,
she looks as though she's going to stay well, and obviously bred to do that. And how are you sort of leaning with Haskoi? She looks like she'll get the 2.5, doesn't she?
Yeah. The problem is there. Not the problem there. The conundrum there is, the Gold Cup is more like a war than a horse race, and for a filly who's only had 4 starts, it's a big ask. You're right. She, in the sense that she shapes like she'll get all of it. She shapes like the Ledger well. There's a certain amount of debate about that, but I felt she got the trip well. But equally, we could supplement for the Hardwick. So there's a lot of water to go under the bridge there. Even though we're only 2 and a bit weeks away, that's a long time. That can be a long time with horses like this at this stage of the year. So we'll see how it develops. But it's a discussion we need to have.
And you've had some nice 2-year-old winners so far this season. Would any of them be heading to the juvenile races?
Yeah, I think Mayonnaise is going to go to the Windsor Castle. He's a horse who won at Bath a couple of Fridays ago. He's a gelding, tough, typical dandy man in that sense, and his owner's a tremendous enthusiast, Peter Mellett, and He likes rolling the dice. So I think he's a horse who go well there. If he wasn't good enough, then we'd cut our cloth to fit. But I think it's worth going. So just him at this stage. I had hoped that Seri Granks would win his novice at Salisbury under a penalty, but I don't think, since he got beat, I think it's fairly clear to us that he too needs a bit of juice in the ground. So he's an unlikely candidate, and I don't really think we've got anything else obvious at this stage.
Okay. And Rafe, you've been very kind with your time. I just quickly want your thoughts on obviously the start of the dash. Novello obviously held on from Silky Wilky's win by a short head, but obviously it was kind of somewhat unsatisfactory due to a few of the outside stalls opening a fraction late. You didn't have a runner in the race, so I'm quite interested to see kind of your thoughts on whether you think it should have been voided or not.
That's a difficult one. And I understand all the complexities with that. The thing that I think has been touched on is, we had 8 races on Saturday to make full use of the world pool. That means some horses got balloted out, and the whole reason that there are more days in the world pool from Britain than any other country is because of our integrity. And that was let down on Saturday. My own view would be very simple. The racecourses need to employ more stalls handlers. Horses are taking it's taking far too long to load each and every field, whether it's Thirsk, Pontefract or Epsom on Derby Day. And if you have more stalls handlers, the horses are in the stalls for less time. And I'd be interested to know how long it was from the first horse being loaded to the last for the dash on Saturday. But I clocked it at least 2.5 minutes. So from Racing TV. So that's too long. Yeah. And there's no need to take that long to load 20 runner fields, or if you employ enough stalls handlers. And the racecourses have consistently fought against that idea. Even when the BHA offered to pay for more during COVID, you'll remember we could only have 2 stalls handlers at the time, and there were a number of horses who weren't going in because of the precedent that would have been set by more stalls handlers. The RCA resisted that at the time, and we don't know how much the racecourses are making from the world pool, but it's significant. Even at 35% down, it's significant. And my view would be that if you had another 5 stalls handlers, that situation wouldn't have happened on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you see the Japan Cup? I happened to watch that, and I didn't time how long it took to load the first horse and the last horse, but they seemed to be going in so quickly, and they got them away so quickly. As you would imagine, it was almost military precision. But I do echo your thoughts. If you're the first one in, and you've got a keen sprinter who wants to jump and run, it's no surprise there's going to be issues, is there? If you're waiting 2.5 minutes.
It's so obvious. Of course, the other point is, Sam, it becomes a vicious circle, because the jockeys who are on horses who don't like being hang back and as far away from the stalls as they possibly can, so that they go in as late as they possibly can. So the whole thing becomes a vicious circle. Yes. And unless the thing is addressed properly, this will continue.
Quite.
Yeah, and the fact that the stewards can come out and say that they're not being materially affected by that was definitely incorrect in my view, because all you needed to do was stop the race a furlong after it had started, and you could see a diagonal formation from low stalls to high stalls.
Yeah, and there is some data out there that shows that those in the higher numbers were almost 0.3 seconds, which, as you know, is a couple of lengths. So it's got to affect it, hasn't it? You know, in a sprint where it takes less than 55 seconds to run, they're big margins.
Yeah.
Rafe, just on a personal pointer, really, just a horse that I've kept my eye on a little bit this year, and he took my eye a bit, just veering away from the controversies of Epsom. A horse called Promoter, who ran on Saturday. I thought he ran a lovely race for you in that mile and a quarter handicap.
Yeah, it's been difficult with him because he has a few issues, and obviously, you know, he ran well in the Horace Hill. He ran okay first time out. He's by showcasing from a staying family. You know, his family of Look Here and his Dan Mirawi got a mile and 6 well. Obviously, you know, he's shown a bit of speed. I wasn't convinced about anything really before Saturday, other than he's a horse who's probably better with juice in the ground, because most of that family are and were. I thought it was a really good effort for a horse who before never ran, mine gone ran somewhere as switched back as Epsom. So I think he's a horse now for a mile and a quarter and possibly a mile and a half.
Yeah.
But it's difficult with him because he, as I say, rattling fast ground isn't going to help him. And I wasn't convinced about Saturday that he'd handle it as well as he did. For him to come home as well as he did, I was really pleased with.
Yeah, I thought it was a lovely run, and want to keep an eye on when the ground does ease a bit then.
Yeah, certainly.
Thanks ever so much for your time, Rafe. You've been very, very generous. And good luck for Royal Ascot and for the rest of the season.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks
Rafe.
a lot. Cheers. Before we get into our Prince of Wales's preview, just to let you know that our sponsors Bet365 have an ITV racing price promise. They will not be beaten on price for any horse on the UK and Irish races shown live on ITV Racing. Full terms and conditions can be found on the website. Sam, with it being a bit of a lesser affair this weekend, we're going to have a quick look ahead to the Prince of Wales Stakes at Royal Ascot, with most of the main contenders obviously having run recently. Luxembourg currently heads the market at 3-1 with Bet365 for the race. Bounced back from a below par reappearance to win the Tattersalls Gold Cup from Baybridge, who's second favourite at 7-2.
Yeah, he was always a horse that they held in high regard last year, and we've heard that before a little bit over the weekend, haven't we? That these horses that Ballydoyle put up on a pedestal, they do realise their potential. Yeah, they're obviously beautiful, beautifully bred, great bloodlines, superbly trained and well ridden. So they are going to be very competitive in these big races. He's the favourite. I thought Baybridge was a little bit unlucky, I must admit. I thought that the Curry just had to wait for a stride or two. It's been a bit of a difficult start to the season for Richard Kingscote as well, through no fault of his own, really. Obviously, he was a bit unfortunate in the Dante, Baybridge. One or two people were out for him after Desert Crown, although he did nothing wrong in my eyes that day. He just got beaten by a better horse that arguably suffered a worse trip in Hookham. So it will turn for him, and it could well turn with Baybridge and going into Ascot. He looks to have a number of nice rides, Richard, and I think this horse will be suited by going back to Ascot. I think I don't see any reason why he shouldn't run a massive race here. He obviously gets on very well with Richard. I presume he'll ride, but obviously there is the looming presence, if Luxembourg doesn't run, of Ryan Moore. But it looks a great matchup between the two of them again. Then you throw in Adiyar, back to form last time out in the Gordon Richards at Newmarket. The second's gone on to boost the form in Ammat. The third and fourth have run perfectly well at Epsom, and Regal Reality's managed to win. So, that form's already working out nicely. Desert Crown, don't think Emily Upjohn will go. And the only other one I quite like at prices is My Prospero. I don't know what price 365 are.
8-1 with Bet365.
Yeah.
Obviously, he looks set to step up in trip, doesn't he? Stayed on well over a mile last time.
Yeah, he was a bit unlucky in the St James's Palace last year, round there. Obviously, handles the round track at Ascot well, within half a length of Bay Bridge as well at the back end in the Champion Stakes as well. And I was really taken with his run behind Modern Games. I thought over a mile at Newbury, that was very much at the bottom level of his stamina requirements. Back up to 10 to a track he loves. He wouldn't mind a bit of juice in the ground if he were being, a little bit picky, but he has handled fast ground well. So I think he looks a very fair each way bet at 8-1 at the moment.
Yeah, if I had to nail colours to my master, it would be Bay Bridge for me. Just that Ascot form, obviously, it's kind of a bit of a rerun of the Champion Stakes, really, isn't it? Bay Bridge beating Adayar at My Prospero in the Champion Stakes last year. He was obviously only beaten a length in this race last year by State of Rest as well. And yeah, I thought it was a perfectly good run at the Curragh in the Tattersalls Gold Cup behind Luxembourg. So yeah, I just think with that course form, I think Bay Bridge for me would be my selection at 7-2.
Yeah, my only slight concern about Bay Bridge is that he ran in this last year, didn't he, and then bounced into the Eclipse, and that race just came a little bit too quick for him. Now there's 24, 25 days, I think, between the Curragh race and Ascot. That should be sufficient enough, I would think, and I wonder whether his trainer has probably learnt from what he did there with him last year, and probably just not quite had him tuned up to the max at the Curragh. So there might be that might have been, even though it was a good race in its own right, that might have been a nice stepping stone forward. And as we know at the Curragh, if you get on that inside rail, it's a nice fast strip of ground. It's very difficult to get past a horse like Luxembourg who wants to do it. So I thought that was a very, very solid run, and I agree with you. I think that Ascot form, I love it round there. So I'd be happy to centre on those two, Bay Bridge and My Prospero.
There we go. That's a brief look ahead to the Prince of Wales Stakes at Royal Ascot. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Many thanks to both Sam and Rafe Beckett for joining me on the show. As always, if you like what you've heard or watched in this or any of our previous episodes, then please leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts or in the comments section on YouTube. We'll be back next week where we'll be joined by Tanya Stevenson.